I'm Mark Besonen, and I'm the director of the Student Workshop for International Coastal and Marine Management, which is also known as the SWIMM program. And we're based at the Hart Research Institute for Gulf of Mexico Studies at Texas A&M University, Corpus Christi. So this is one of several short interviews that we're conducting with reef stakeholders from around the Gulf. And by stakeholders, I'm talking in a broad sense from individuals to groups or larger organizations. And the idea here is to provide sort of a tri-national perspective to the SWIMM 2021 students as they're working on a report card for Alacranes Reef. So in this interview, we have the fantastic possibility to speak with Erica Towle, who has got a really wide perspective about coral reefs because that's part of her job. And the other thing that's really important from our perspective in the SWIMM program is that she just recently helped complete a status report, but sort of in the format of a report card for all of the U.S. reef systems that are part of her program that we'll hear about in a minute. So she could give us some really important guidance, hopefully, for the SWIMM 2021 program. Anyway, welcome, Erica, to this meeting, and thank you so much for taking the time. And we'll start into the questions in a minute, but if you could start off by just briefly telling us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Thanks, Mark. Hi, everybody. I am Erica Towle. I am the National Coral Reef Monitoring Program Coordinator. It's kind of a mouthful, but we call it NCRMP, National Coral Reef Monitoring Program. And I'm based in NOAA's Coral Reef Conservation Program in the United States, and based in Washington, D.C., which is where our headquarters is. So you might think, that's funny. Why is a coral scientist in Washington, D.C.? But it's because I coordinate a program that, so NOAA, which is the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, is headquartered in Washington, D.C., and we coordinate all of our different coral science programs across the entire United States, which includes Florida, the United States Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, Flower Garden Banks in the Gulf of Mexico, and then also all of our U.S. coral reef areas in the Pacific Ocean, too. So it's great to be here with you guys. I'm really excited to chat with you, and looking forward to this interview.
Great, thanks. So let's start off. We've got 5 questions for you, and we'll start off right now. So Erica, the NOAA Coral Reef Conservation Program chose to provide its recent status report on U.S. coral reefs in the format of a report card. And so that's something versus, I'm curious about why you guys made that decision versus using something like a traditional text report with inline graphics and tables and things like that. What motivated you guys to choose this report card format?
Thanks for that question, Mark. So yeah, historically, NOAA's Coral Reef Conservation Program has always focused on archiving our monitoring data and maybe focusing on sort of technical reports or technical memos or peer-reviewed publications, largely aimed at the scientific community. And, I think a lot about big data and how to leverage big data and to answer questions, especially questions about conservation. That's what we do in the Coral Reef Conservation Program. So I think a lot about, how if we're going to move the needle on coral reef conservation, we really need to tailor products towards policymakers. And in the United States, that's U.S. Congress. And so we partnered with the University of Maryland Center for Environmental Science, UMSES. They're experts in science communication. And so we sort of created this great synergy between our coral scientists at NOAA and the science communication scientists at UMSES. And we thought, hey, let's put together for the first time ever a comprehensive U.S. coral reef status report so that we can really communicate the issues facing coral reefs to people that are actually making the funding decisions. And again, that's U.S. Congress. The irony is that to make a product for a non-technical audience, you have to do the most technical analyses up front, right? So you can imagine this process was very labor intensive, going through trying to compare all of our current data sets to the best available historical data to score them, right? It's incredibly challenging, but it was ultimately very rewarding. And I'll just note that we actually got confirmation that our hard work paid off, because in a recent congressional hearing in the United States House of Representatives last month in May 2021, an actual member of Congress, the representative from Puerto Rico, directly referenced our status report in the hearing. So that was really cool, because that is why we made this product, so that policymakers could use it. So that was just a very cool moment to see them actually being used for the direct audience that we intended them to be used for.
Okay, thank you for that answer. So let me go on to my second question. And so with respect to this 2020 coral reefs status report, I mean, it does cover a huge area, like 10 different coral reef systems. And so I'm just thinking about some of the realities of this, because I know you guys had your first meeting in your first workshop in like February 2020 last year. And then, a month later, coronavirus epidemic shut everything down. So how were you able to manage this huge effort, basically, with 10 different reef systems and basically spread all over the globe?
It was tough, Mark. I'm not going to lie. I'm very grateful we were able to have that in-person workshop prior to when everything shut down in March 2020, because that initial meeting is so key to have in person, if at all possible. But I will say that even prior to the global pandemic, we had gotten pretty good in our team about doing virtual meetings. As I mentioned briefly in my introduction, a lot of our team members are all over the United States. We've got some people that are based in Hawaii, we've got people that are based in Florida, we've got people based in Washington, D.C. and other places as well. And so we were somewhat well equipped, I think, to face the challenges of a virtual workspace that COVID put us in. But yeah, I mean, we had countless calls and emails and very long Zoom meetings. And I think for me, the hardest part was at the culmination when we had finished the product, doing the virtual press release, because I think, it was a culmination of so much work, and it would have been really nice had we all been able to be in person together. But I will say the silver lining of the virtual press release for the U.S. Coral Reef Status Report was that we got a lot more participants than I think we might have gotten had we done it in person. We are very honored and proud that we actually were able to have Senator Brian Schatz of Hawaii, one of the senators from Hawaii, was able to participate with us virtually. So that was incredible, and that might not have happened had we had it in person. So our partners and the NOAA team actually won a very prestigious media award. It's called the 2021 Hermes Creative Platinum Award, and it was for the press release. And basically, the Platinum Award is the highest level designation, and for reaching a broad audience. I think we reached over 700 million people with the media placements in watershed communities around the nation. And I'm incredibly proud of that impact, because that's, again, the whole point of creating a product made for the general public and policymakers, is so that it can be used as an outreach and education tool. So that reach was, exactly what we were. That was actually beyond, our wildest dreams of what we were hoping for in terms of reaching the public.
Okay, so let me go on to my next question. Erica, given this, wide group of constituents and their stakeholders, how were you actually able to get consensus, on the indicators, the scoring for the report card, the actual, even the format? How were you able to kind of navigate that? Because sometimes it's hard just even on one particular system, but again, you're on 10 different systems, so.
Yeah, thanks for that question. It really depended on the indicator, Mark. For some, there was consensus fairly quickly, where historical baselines and historical data were very clear. And then, of course, there were many indicators and many instances where we didn't come to consensus right away, particularly where baselines were a bit more subjective. I can give you an example. So we had one of our indicators for how the climate theme or climate piece of coral reef ecosystems we're doing is ocean. We had several different. We had ocean warming, we had ocean pH, we had reef material growth. So if the reef was net accreting or net erosional, and so there's actually really good data, as you know, of what pre-industrial carbon dioxide and pre-industrial pH are in the ocean. You know, we know that very clearly. And so for those indicators, we had consensus pretty quickly on how our current data compared to pre-industrial PCO2 levels, for example. So the water chemistry indicators and the climate indicators consensus was fairly easy, if you will. For a lot of the other indicators, for example, one of the themes that we actually think that we're pretty progressive and forward thinking, because our monitoring program incorporates socioeconomics. So we actually incorporate social science surveys of humans that live on the coast in these jurisdictions. And, you know, we think that conservation can't really be achieved without an informed and engaged public. And so that's why we felt it was really important, albeit somewhat controversial, to include the social science mixed in with the biological and physical science. And so, as you can imagine, there's no thresholds and like sort of known baselines for how many people should be aware of threats to coral reefs, or how many people should be engaging in pro-environmental behavior, or how many people should support marine protected areas and other management initiatives. And so that's what I mean when there was no sort of set threshold, when things were very subjective. That obviously took a lot of consensus building. And so those indicators required a lot more discussion, a lot more brainstorming. And ultimately, the NOAA team and the UMCES team relied directly upon local resource managers on the ground in every jurisdiction that we were in, because those are the people that really have their pulse on what's really happening with respect to the coastal communities and how they're interacting and using coral reef natural resources.
Yeah, that makes sense, and that I can understand it would have been a very difficult process. Well, not difficult, but you know, just a lot of effort going into it to get everybody on board. So, well, kudos for that. So, because this is going to be this is our goal for the 2021 SWIMM program, is to put together, you know, sort of at least a preliminary environmental report card for Alacranes Reef. I'm wondering if you can give us any, you know, potential advice or guidance or suggestions about what we could do, what we could avoid, you know, as we work on this preliminary report card. Do you have any thoughts about, you know, or advice you can give us?
Yeah. Thanks for asking. I think my best advice would be to participate with an open mindset and to participate actively throughout the whole week, the whole process. And what I mean by be open, which seems pretty broad, is try not to have a preconceived notion of what the score for your reef is going to be, or what the figures are going to look like, or the graphics, or even the text. I think, you know, the workshop process is really important. Sort of let it evolve organically, if you will. And that's what I mean by sort of go in with an open mindset. And then just, you know, make sure that your opinions are heard. Don't be shy. As long as you're being respectful when you voice your opinion, you know, participate actively, and don't be afraid to share your ideas, because I think that the best products come from having diverse groups of people and opinions at the table. So definitely don't shy away from that opportunity to have your voice be heard.
Okay, well, great. We'll spread that, or we'll share that advice with the group, and so that's going to probably be quite helpful for us. Okay, I've got one last question for you, and this is a little bit off topic, but I'll take advantage of it. But you know, there is this Stony coral tissue loss disease epic that has just really spread like wildfire over the last decade, and even less time, from, you know, the Florida Keys all the way, you know, clockwise around the Caribbean, and it's really ravaged many parts of these coral reefs along the way. And so, do you have any thoughts about the potential spread of this Stony coral tissue loss disease into the Gulf of Mexico, or maybe even over to the Pacific?
Thanks, Mark. Well, let me just state up front that I am not a stony coral tissue loss disease expert. So let me just be clear about that. But yes, you're totally correct. Atlantic and Caribbean coral reefs are facing an absolutely unprecedented outbreak of the new coral disease, stony coral tissue loss disease. And as you pointed out, it's characterized by rapid spread, rapid tissue loss, and very high coral mortality rates. And so, again, as you said, stony coral tissue loss disease was first reported in Florida in 2014, and since then it has spread the entire Florida Reef tract at this point, unfortunately, and spread to the wider Caribbean. And so I believe the disease has affected over half of the stony coral species along the entirety of Florida's coral reef. And again, many Caribbean countries and territories, including the U.S. Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico, which is a big part of where my program monitors. And so as the disease continues to spread throughout the Caribbean, obviously a lot of questions are arising about disease transmission. We still don't know exactly how transmission works and exactly what are the causative agents of the disease itself. And so, concerns about potential spread to the Gulf of Mexico and certainly to the Pacific Basin are rising. Pacific coral reefs, as you probably know, have an even greater diversity of stony coral species than we do here in the Atlantic and Caribbean. And so, and actually many of the same coral families and species that are found, genuses that are found in the Atlantic Caribbean are also found in the Pacific. And so, the current potential threat to all U.S. coral reefs and Caribbean wide is of great concern. And so NOAA is really trying right now to fund a lot of research and do a lot of sort of active work on corals where we know that the disease is actively spreading. And it's something that we really need to be very concerned about and very aware about and tracking very closely.
Okay, well, thank you. Well, thank you, Erica, for taking the time to meet with us today and for spreading some advice about how we can maybe approach our report card for the SWIMM 2021 program.
Thanks. I wish you so much luck, and I can't wait to see the finished product.
Crossing our fingers for October. All right, thank you.